Ministry of Science and Technology is celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav by conducting 75 science and technology events. These programs are aimed at industrial connect, and therefore participation of industry is essential in these webinars. Today, on behalf of Ministry of Science and Technology, I welcome you all to the webinar on investment potential in waste management for startups, aimed at knowledge sharing, entrepreneurship, and skill development for the domain of waste management. And it is my pleasure to welcome all the eminent speakers today. We have with us Ms. P. Binisha, Environment Scientist and Board Member, Technology Development Board, Commander Navneet Kaushik, Scientist F, Technology Development Board, Mr. Anirudh Jalan, Co-Founder and Chief Strategy Officer, Recycle, Mr. A. L.N. Rao, Director, Materials Recycling Association of India and CEO of Exigo Recycling, Mr. Nitin Agarwal, Chief Strategy Officer, Pashupati Group, Mr. Hanuman Saraf, Business Head, Germcorp Recycling and Technologies Private Limited, Mr. Abhishek Agashe, CEO and Founder, E-Lifecycle Management, Mr. Sahil Ghai, Marketing Manager, The Shakti Plastic Industries, Mr. Armendra Kumar, Vice President, Recycling, Re-Sustainability Limited, Mr. Vivek Verma, Chief Impact Officer, Recycle Foundation, Ms. Himani Iron, Manager, Asra Foundation, Mr. Saket Krishna, Assistant Commissioner, Delhi Municipal Corporation, Professor Brajesh Dubey, Associate Professor, IIT Kharagpur, Mr. Ullas Parlikar, Director, Materials Recycling Association of India. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of science, technology, and innovation. I am confident that by the end of this webinar, we will be having many more new ideas, a lot of fresh energy and partnership to sustain our efforts in order to bring potential investors for startups working in the domain of waste management. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mehti. Thank you very much for such a warm welcome and giving the audience and the speakers a great sigh that we are going to have 75 scientific technology programs over. So there are ideas coming into it. Now, before I take any more time, let me pass it on to Dr. P. Binisha, the environmental scientist and board member of the Technology Development Board. I'm sure you will open new vistas and new ideas for people to really take on. Over to you. Floor is yours. You're on mute, probably. You're on mute.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Sodhi. So before we hear from all the experts, what I would do is to set the agenda so that we can have a kind of a channelized thought process. So that's the reason I will just take about 7 minutes, wherein I would introduce or to set the context. So here the topic is investment potential in waste management for startups. So let's look at the context in terms of, I know most of you, I know all of you are aware of this, but since I was telling you that we would have this channel right, so let's see what is the position of India. We know that we are the 7th largest country with 1/6 of the world population. And all of us have been hearing in the last 1 week that there is a view that we have already surpassed China, whereas there is still some scientific evidence saying that 2023 we will surpass China and become the most populous nation in the world. Now, what does this mean? We have only 2.4% of the world's total area. That's what we are occupying. But we have only about 4% of the world's fresh water. Land is also scarce, water is also scarce, which are the two most important or the basic necessities of life. And with that, with so much of population, we are definitely very highly resource stressed. because when land is scarce, then everything else also is scarce. If we look at our economic setup, we are having a very high GDP growth. I mean, it's rising. Of course, we did pull down a little bit because of the COVID, but still we are at least poised for a 5 trillion economy very soon. And we are having a lot of disposable income. When we look at the demographic factors, again, rising population, increasing urbanization. If we look at our global integration, we are rising even in terms of international trade and travel. Now, what does all this mean? Which means our infrastructure is going to be really very, very demanding. We need to really set up the infrastructure in place, of which water, wastewater, sanitation, waste management is definitely one aspect, which because of that highly stressed, resource stressed reason, this is going to be a sector which definitely needs a big investment. And when we talk about investment, here we are also opening a complete Pandora's box for new innovations, and also in terms of technology, the kind of technology deployment that is required. And when these two are necessary, it is definitely the startups which are going to really boom. So this is one context. Then let's look at I have taken only two examples. That's the wastewater sector and the waste management sector, so that we will understand how much of investment, how and why of the investments. Now let's look at the wastewater treatment here. The Indian sewage treatment industry was estimated to be 2.4 billion USD. That's in 2019. Now, if you look at this as 2.4 billion USD, what is it that we have been doing? That is actually a very grave situation. I mean, it's a really sad state, because with this 2.4 billion USD, we have been able to treat only about 30 to 35% of our wastewater generated. Now, that's something which is really that instead of looking at it as a weakness, that's where the potential lies. And here again, this is treatment. When we say, we are only talking about not the full treatment what is required, but to a large extent we are treating. But that means almost about 70 to 80% of wastewater needs treatment in our country. So that's a huge potential, and that's an area where you really require investment. Now, our country, 100% FDI has been allowed. So there have been PPP modes of projects. And if you look at the market size of the sewage treatment industry, again, that is 13% CAGR growth is there. So that's again a good potential for investment. And in 2025, you can see that the requirement is also quite high. Now, if we look at the solid waste management investment, here 62 million metric tons per year is our generation, and it's expected to increase by almost 165 million metric tons by 2030. Now, here again, it is not just solid waste as one single entity. This can be broken down into several waste management, solid waste. Hazardous waste is there, biomedical waste, electronic waste. So there are the CND waste. So there are various different types of waste which are all in the solid state. Now, there again, the estimated annual increase per capita is 1.3% per year. And here also, just like how we have the wastewater treatment, only 20% of it is being treated currently. So there again, there's a plethora of investments which can come in. 7.2 million tons of hazardous waste is also part of this. So if we actually look at what kind of landfilling is necessary, it is about 1 square kilometer of additional landfill every year that is required. Now, I just give you this small example is because we need to now again go back to my first slide, which shows that we are having very less land area, and there's so much of population. So with all this, it's 1600 crore, which is required in terms of rupees, that is required for treatment. But now again, this sector is also currently worth 2.2 billion USD, and it is increasing by 7.17% growth. So these are the two examples. Now let's look at who are the stakeholders, because this investment is coming, or it is what kind of stakeholders and beneficiaries are there in this? Suppliers of technologies. That's like, if you look at wastewater, it's MBR, MBBR, the decentralized treatment systems, the SBR technology. If you look at solid waste, it's biogas, pyrolysis, incinerator. So these are all the technologies and the technology providers who are there. Component manufacturers, again, both in wastewater and solid waste, you have several components. So that's again another sector by itself. Then you have the operators and maintenance professionals. These are like the service providers. So if it is biogas, it's MELAM. If you talk about the solid waste management and other waste management, it's resustainability. You have recycling, MTC, Parisara, Exigo. So, that's again another complete group. We have project developers. So this again comes both in the government and also in the private sector. Then you have the financiers like ourselves, the TDB. Then we have the product marketeers. So, this is like, or the consultants. Sometimes these consultants, product marketeers, all these are also intermingled. So, this is the kind of stakeholders also which we are looking at. Now, coming to why is investment in environment, especially the waste management, which is going to be sustainable, because that is another thing which is very interesting for the investors. So here, if you look at, we know that India's potential, there's increase in the population, and we also know what kind of technologies are necessary. The gap between the supply and the demand is going to only widen, because as you increase the population, then you are going to have, or the urbanization, the lifestyle, all these put together, our demand and the demand is so high that the supply cannot really cope up with it. It's something like our treadmill. So how much ever we run, we are still at the same place, and we can't move forward. And then any technology which minimizes this footprint, the carbon footprint, or what I mentioned in the first slide, is going to last, giving continuous profit. So this is something which is very, very interesting for us. So thank you. With this context, and let's talk about what investments and how the startups can really leverage this kind of a potential in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Banisha. Thank you very much for this very comprehensive and provocative presentation which you made. And I'm sure it is thought-provoking to people across the lines. But one point which I want to emphasize, and before we go to these panels, is that really we are resource stressed. We are consuming about 9 billion metric tons all across, presently about 8 to 9 billion metric tons. And the world all across is about 200 billion. So we are about 4 to 5%. So the population is 3% and 17%. And the area is 3%. So, these are the jugglings which we need to do. But taking forward the panels, thank you very much. Now, audience, we have two panels. We have a host of people who are very experienced and have lots to say. But, we have one panel first, which will be talking on the experience sharing on waste management and startup. We had 6 panelists, but I got a request and we will add another one here because of time constraints. He's having a meeting in the other, and my word goes for Nitin. So Nitin, we will have you in this panel. We will extend the panel time from this to 5 more minutes. But just to request all the speakers, I'll call the names and we will go one by one. But I would like each one of them to say crisply for 4 minutes, please. Mind your time, lest you want me to raise like this. And 4 minutes, and then we come back again to each one of you for a minute and a half in order to really say, how do you really see that what sort of policy should be there or regulation should be there for the startups? So my time goes now, and we invite Dr. A.L.N. Rao. Dr. Mehti had already introduced. Rao Saab, floor is yours.
Thank you, Surizab. Just to give you the context of two industries in the waste management, e-waste and batteries. E-waste, we know India produces around 3.2 million metric tons, and the EPR rules came in 2016, and the new rules are getting introduced this year. And it's going to give in a lot of opportunities, business opportunities for existing players and newcomers too. And in the battery side, we know the explosion that's happening in the EV side, and the lithium-ion batteries recycling also is going to be very, very big. And the entire ecosystem in the EVs, again, in the waste management sphere is going to increase. And we're looking at around 100 gigawatts of batteries alone coming up by 2030. So we believe there's a lot of potential for, the entire stakeholders in this is going to be the identification of the asset players and pricing and, packaging and logistics, reverse logistics and warehousing, and then second life and recycling and fresh reuse of the metals again. So the potential is very, very high. So let me come to as a startup, what is it? What is that attracts the startups? Government aid, that's the key, that's the foremost one that I would look at as the key parameter for success of the startup industry in the country. Low interest loans, that's another big element there. That's
Brilliant.
something which works upon, and subsidies, to these waste management companies, the startups. These are the three main pillars that's going to drive the startup culture in the waste management sphere in a big way. There are multiple programs that the government of India has come out. The government is spending a lot of money on various schemes for manufacturing. Even if half of that is being looked into, that budgets can be allocated for the waste management spheres. Trust me, the business potential in the country is going to be phenomenal in the waste management industry, and huge number of startups are going to come in. The support functions of the government initiatives have come in Center of Excellences, it's come in the PLI schemes that have come in, the state schemes have come in, the technologies that's required in the waste management sphere, especially in the recycling part, if I were to name, by the NMLs and by the CMETs or the CPETs, they're all coming out there. There's some success stories also showcased there. But it's not enough. We need to have much more than that. Presence of investors and investment funds in the last few years, 3, 4, 5 years, has actually started to trickle in. There are some visibility that's been seen in the country. There are some certain investments that has happened, but these are in very selective specific sectors that has happened as on particular stakeholders. But at a larger level, we are not yet there for that matter. So what are the obstacles? If I say I were a startup, and what's the obstacle that I'm looking at? Now high investments in this waste management industry, capital investments is very high, and that's a blocker for a startup to start with. Land is another big issue. Various governments have come out with manufacturing for support for manufacturers in a big way by allocating lands, but for the waste management industry and also for the recycling industry, it's not there. And that hand-holding is a must by every state government and the central government too. Power, materials, materials, if I say know your material, is the concept that we need to go into, because the startup guys who are going to come in, we see a lot of young boys and girls, women entrepreneurs, who have already started working in the waste management sphere in the last few years' time, and many more would come in too. But knowing
Half
your
a minute
material,
more, sir. Half
yeah,
a minute.
sure. Knowing your material is going to be the key, and so with elaborate infrastructure, is a very, very big task in itself. The lack of securing the necessary licenses, permits, statutory compliances, it's a nightmare. We know that there is an ease of doing business out there. I think we'll have to relook at it, and by saying that ease of doing waste management
I'm
business.
going to come back to you, Dr. Rao, in another 20 minutes. Let me go into the others. I don't want to stop you. It's a real earnest request, humble. And we are going to come back to you for what policy and regulation. Please keep your words with you and share it with the others. But let me now take the second speaker, which is Dr. Saket Krishna, the Assistant Commissioner of Delhi Municipal Corporation North. Is he there with us? I can't see him there. If he's not there, we will have him coming later. So let me go on to the next one without losing time. And can I take Mr. Shraff, Hanuman Shraff? Please, the floor is yours for the next 4 minutes. And then Nitin, we will go back to you.
Good afternoon,
Hanuman, thank
everyone.
you very much. Please go ahead.
So I will restrict my discussion to plastic industry because a lot of other eminent guests are there to talk about the other fractions of the waste management. So I just give you an overview. Ki plastic industry is almost 18 million ton per annum, which translates to around 180 lakhs ton consumption every year in India with a CAGR of between 8 to 10%. The industry size is almost 5.1 lakh crores, and it is expected that it is going to increase manifold in next 5 years. So before any startup or how I perceive or how I do a business is, first I understand the market size. So how big is the market, and do I have a place for myself in the market? So if I talk about the market size, I think it is fairly placed for a lot of new entrants into the market. What are the potentials? If I want to do a SWOT analysis, what are the strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat in the market? We have to analyze that. So what are the potential opportunities? So if I talk about the plastic recycling business, so I divide the plastic recycling business into two parts: the ethical recycling, which is more compliant, which meet the ESG requirement, which meet the legal compliances, and which meet all the requirement of the law of the land, so which adhere to the law of the. So if I talk about the ethical recycling, it is hardly 10% in India. So to me, the potential, if I want to do a ethical business, the potential lies in almost 90%, and I can accommodate, or the industry can accommodate, a lot of new entrants into the business. Going forward, I think there is with the new amendment in the PWM rules, there is a huge opportunity. If I talk about the size of the recyclable granules, or the PCR, what we say, it is going to be 25% or 40. So the packaging industry contributes to 43% of the total plastic business. So it is almost 8 million metric ton. And out of that, if the PCR requirement is 25%, so it is 2 million metric ton. So if the requirement is 2 million metric ton per annum, which translates to almost 1 point divided by 12, if I do, so it is a huge number in terms of the requirement of the industry. And if I talk about the players in the industry, there are hardly any players. So if we the startup industry are focused what they want to do, but the quality is going to play a major role in the whole business, because if you are not quality compliant, and if you are not meeting the expectation or the standards of the industry, probably there would not be a requirement for the such type of products. So you have to meet the industry requirement, you have to meet the expectation of the industry in terms of the compliances, in terms of the quality, and in terms of the pricing. So these three determinants are going to be very critical in long term to determine the success of your business. But the best part is, if you are on a zero scale of a zero, and whatever steps you take is a success to you. So there is no failure in the industry. There should not be any concern to any of the stakeholder, because every step we are taking is a success. But last point which I want to come up with, there are two basic ideas through which a business runs. One is grant and the subsidies. One is a business model, which itself is a big driver or a motive for a business. So my sincere request to all the stakeholders: don't make your business plan based on the grant or subsidy or EPR. Make your business plan based on your costing, rather than making it on grants and subsidies. Grants and subsidies could be icing on the cake, but it can't be a basis for a business model.
Hanuman, thank you. Wonderful. You're going to hold two of your thoughts. I'm going to come back to you in a minute's time. You see, through the audience, all the three speakers are talking the same thing, that there is an abundance of opportunities coming your way. There are ways to how to find, whether it was Dr. Rao, but Dr. Banisha, Hanuman. Let's go to the next speaker. Nitin, let me come to you and really see how you are going to share the experiences across to the startups. Over to you, please. You're on mute, Nitin.
Thank you. Now it's audible?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon to everyone. Two ways. One is about the scope of in the waste management, and second is about the opportunities and how to protect investment in the model. As our earlier speakers have mentioned, that about 62 million tons of waste is generated in India every year. Let me tell you that only about 43 million tons is being collected, and about 19 million tons is being leaked into the ecosystem and marine bodies. So there is a scope to collect and capture that 19 million metric tons. That is one thing. After the 43 million tons, we are only recycling about 12 million tons. So 31 million tons is again going to incineration and other waste. So there is a scope to capture that 31 million ton and divert it from landfills and other spaces. So in total, there are about 50 million metric tons of waste annually, which has a potential, and we have to capture and find ways to get value out of it. So it's a huge quantity, and there's a lot of scope on this. Now, ULBs are being mandated and expected to prepare their financial and waste management plans at their local levels. And as per Solid Waste Management Rule 2016, they are being asked and expected to tie up with private parties, private players, and there's an opportunity in this way for the private players and coming up startups in this sector to shake hands with them and find a solution collectively. Now, coming out to the opportunities and fundings, there are opportunities in terms of advocating of the segregation of source, the segregation of waste at the source. That is very critical and a very important aspect which we are facing today. As a recycler, we understand the problem of importance of segregation at source. There are a lot of waste, a lot of polymers are being mixed up in terms of plastic, and a lot of inert impurities are also being added by our systems, be it consumer level or the industrial level, and that all gamut of waste goes to the different channels and value chain and reaches as a recycler, and that costs us a lot of money and energy in terms of getting it upcycled. So a lot of scope is there in terms of segregation source, collection of waste, processing, recycling, reusing, and repairing and reusing. So these are a few things which need to be added up in our thought process, that we need to segregate, recycle, also reuse, repair, and reuse. So that will add value to the waste that we are getting from different stakeholders. Now, as Hanumanji rightly said, that and as a startup or as a young person, I should not take grant or subsidy as a base of starting up my business. I feel that a young person, a startup should design and devise its own sustainable business model.
Excellent.
Based on understanding the waste content first. before starting the concept and the setup of manufacturing and anything, first we need to understand the content of waste. What is the content? What are the polymers? What are the fractions? What are the percentages? How we can deal with them? Second is, how can we practically segregate these contents? That should be scalable and practical also, in terms of viability, in terms of feasibility, in terms of economical viability. All these are very important before this. After this is, after the segregation, how can I improve the quality of that separated content so that I can take it to the level, this feedstock, so that we can upcycle it? Because if the quality of that feedstock is not good, you can only downcycle it, not upcycle it, and cannot get a good quality product out of it, and cannot bring it to the high-end product in the mainstream. So based on all these studies, a sustainable business model has to be developed by the young people and the bright minds. And based on this, when we present this model, certainly we will get the good opportunities, and we can attract the investment into these.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you very much. Sorry, you have another minute to go by when we come on policy and what do you feel? And I think so. The audience must be very happy. You know, these people who are sitting here, 16 of them or 15 of them, they really are talking business, and they are really giving opportunities across. Thank you very much, Nitin. Let me go to the next gentleman, Vivek Verma, the Chief Impact Officer of Recycle Foundation. The floor is yours, sir, for another 4 minutes. Sir, you are on mute, sir. Mute. We cannot hear you, sir. Vivekji, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, you carry.
No. Now, yes.
Oh, what happened to him? Got dropped.
Oh, I see. I think he's got dropped. What I will do is, let me move on to the next speaker. And because time is very short, Nitin, thank you very much, but we are coming back to you. Let me go to this young lady who is with us, Miss Himani Aaron. Is Himani there, please? Can't see her. Is she there?
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, very good, Himani. The
Yes,
floor
sir.
is yours for next 4 minutes, and we'll come back to Vivek.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon. So, I am from Asra Welfare Association. Asra Welfare Association is a NGO working for the welfare of waste picker. So I
Very
feel
good.
that we are a bit different organization from all the other partners who are present in the panel right now. So before going ahead, I would like to explain something about our organization, that how we work and how we take our operations. So basically, Asra Welfare Association started in 2015. Our main vision is to create a culture of sustainable waste management practice that go hand in hand with dignified, equitable life for every waste worker. Our mission is to promote 5R principle, that is refuse, reduce, reuse, repurpose, and recycle, to ultimately promote circular economy. Our goal is to assist urban local bodies, brands, corporates, industries, manufacturers, Nagar Panchayats in waste management program and system. We are working in Mumbai in 2 wards, H West ward and K East ward, and we are also pitching our waste management model to other wards of the Mumbai. Uh, our second goal is to eradicate the inhuman condition of waste scavenging through access to formal employment, through healthcare, education, and skill development. We also support the overall economic, social well-being of waste workers by providing dignity and identity to their work. And lastly, we also work on achieving the behavior change in citizens. So in our experience of 7 years, we have diverted around 36,000 ton of dry waste from the landfill. We have worked on empowering around 900 plus Safai Sathis. We have 70,000 1,000 plus households who are connected with us, whom we are collecting and making them understand the source segregation. There are 50 plus brands, aggregators, recyclers who are connected with us. So the complete work of our organization is basically divided into three parts, that is collects, cares and connects. So basically our founder Heather Ali Sayed, he has experience in this industry since 40 years, and through his experience he has skilled our Safai Sathis in segregated into 92 plus categories of waste. In our collect model, we actually work on all type of plastic, that is soft plastic, hard plastic. We also work on paper, glass, metal, e-waste. And other than the high value waste, we also work on low value waste, that is thermocol, multi-layer plastic, textile waste and footwear waste. So over the years and with the connectivity, we are able to process around 200 to 400 ton of high value plastic in a month. We also have a capacity to process multi-layer plastic 60 to 100 tons per month. We recently started working on textile waste also and thermocol waste also. For these waste, because they are new, so we are right now processing around 2 to 3 tons per month. We also have the capacity to work on old discarded footwears and many other things. So basically, like we are here talking about developing a sustainable business model. So although we are an NGO, but past 7 years we are working with municipal corporation for handling the dry waste operations, and we are able to bring the sustainability in our operations through our work. So like Nitin sir has said in his dialogues, that segregation is one of the major part of the complete process which we are talking about, that is waste management. So according to us, and according to, like, if any startup want to start like a NGO, or if anyone want to I mean they want to work for the welfare of the people as well as for the welfare of the environment, so the major things which is required is
They are welcome to learn from you. Himani, I will have to stop you. You will have another 1 minute to come into policy. But, I must say, I really feel that you have really touched the heart of the program today. And when you and Heather are extreme inspirers to a very safe, secure, sustainable systems for new organizations to learn from. Thank you very much, Himani. I'll come back to you for a minute later on. Let me finish with the colleague who was lost in between, Vivek Verma. Vivek, can we have you back? Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Brilliant.
Thank you, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry about the glitch. I was just saying that, I completely endorse some of the views shared earlier, that it has to become sustainable. While we talk about sustainability for others, I think it is equally important that we need to become sustainable. So every startup looking at it needs to keep that in mind. Lots of numbers have been shared. I'll only share one number that we believe at Recycle Foundation, that the opportunity for India is $1 trillion opportunity. So it's nothing less than spectacular. But having said that, I think the key is really what needs to be done to capitalize this opportunity. I think the key is about behavioral change. Because while we can talk about the fancy terms, sustainability, ESG, circular economy, all of that, how do we make that a common denominator that a man on the street, a common citizen understands that? Which is where I think the largest opportunity lies. How do we create awareness? How do we take this message to a common human being on the ground? And I think that's where startups can play phenomenal role, use technology, make this message to people down the line. And it's not related to urban. It has to be rural, tier 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 towns, because every place there is enough opportunity that needs to happen. Now, other key aspect, I think that where the startup world can play a phenomenal role is anything that gets measured gets changed. So how do we bring in more impact measurement mechanisms so that we have real numbers to share? We can demonstrate the move that has happened. And that is another place where startups can play a phenomenal role. I think the lowest denominator in this whole industry is what we call the Safai Mitra. the person who's really making this whole thing happen, the pillar on whose shoulders this whole industry rests. And that's the outstanding opportunity. What can we do to uplift the Safai Mitra community? What can we do to get them a identity? What can we do to get them working loans, get them working capital, get them direct benefit transfers coming to them? How do we get them insurance? How do we get them give safety kits? So all of these, each of what I talked about is a large opportunity where startups can help solve these social problems on the ground. I think another area where there is a large opportunity is governments after government, whether state or central, keeps announcing schemes because this is a very large vote bank. Now, how do those schemes really materialize into a benefit to the beneficiary? How does it get to the person on the ground? Now, there are startups like Haq Darshak, many others who are doing work in this space, but that's another fantastic opportunity that happens. Also, all of this material movement that is going to happen across the country, whether it's plastic, e-waste, or any of that, opens another opportunity for logistics. And that is going to be another large opportunity that I think opens up. And the last point I want to make here is about the fact that I think for a common person to understand more about circular economy, there has to be a lot more product creation that needs to happen using this material. We keep saying waste to material, but the key is, what does this material mean? How does it come back so I can touch and feel the products that are coming out? So I think each of this is an opportunity, massive in size. And I'll only summarize by saying all of this put together is $1 trillion opportunity for India if the startup world can kind of start looking at impact on the ground, execution, and making a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now have two speakers left. I can see Mr. Saket Krishna, the Assistant Commissioner from Delhi North with us, and then we have Sahil who will speak, and then I'll come to each one of you. For a minute, please, I would like you to say how you have received the investments and they have helped you. Okay, that will be the point which we will discuss. Thank you very much. And now over to Mr. Saket Krishna. Floor is yours, sir, for the next 4 minutes. You're on a mute, sir. Yes, please. Can you hear us? Mr. Saket Krishna. We cannot hear you, sir. Either you are on a mute. Hello, we can't still hear you. No, we can't hear you.
I think there are two devices which are switched on.
Mr. Krishna, are you having two devices where you are working? My colleague from the Technology Development Board is sharing. Can you hear us? No, we cannot hear you, sir. Okay, let me get to Sahil while Mr. Krishna sets up his system. Let me get to Sahil. Sir, be with us while you set it up all. Be with us. I'm going to come back to you and then each one of you in the panel. Over to Sahil, please. Is Sahil there with us?
Sure.
Sahil, go ahead.
Sir,
Another 4 minutes.
everybody is talking about source segregation, and I'm really confident that one day we will definitely achieve source segregation at every level. So what I'm going to talk about next is, like, after the source segregation is done, all these aggregators are informally financed. So that financing needs to be, chalked out, and that there is a trade finance requirement there, so that we can enable all the small aggregators, all the mid-level aggregators and the rack pickers, so that they can actually channelize the product, and the this trade of the plastic, I'm only restricting myself to plastic, that plastic and all the recyclable waste, it doesn't stop. The whole supply chain doesn't stop. Because to enable $1 trillion economy, you would at least need $1 billion to enable the grassroots collection mechanism. The next thing I can talk about, that recycling is still not considered itself as a sector by the government. We, even on my MSME certificate, it is written we are a manufacturing firm. So if recycling is recognized first as an industry, and after that, whatever incentives the government can provide, whatever environmental credits or whatever EPR credits or what all, environmental health, safety, any sort of credits, which, the government can give us or the any other policy, existing policy can give us, that will also enable us to drive the recycling economy. As you can see on the CPCB EPR plastic.in on the national dashboard, there are very handful of recyclers, plastic recyclers, who have registered from every state. So this needs to be decentralized, and I appreciate the point Mr. Rao that has mentioned that there is a requirement of low interest loans. Such low interest loans I have seen set up, plastic recycling setup establishing in just 5 to 10 lakh rupees. So such low setups, if people have good credit history and everything, and all the documents are in check, such single window operations from the government can also enable the financing of and enabling the decentralized not only plastic recycling, but it can also be replicated into e-waste recycling as well. And what I see that each and every ward can have a small recycling setup, along with the small segregation setup. The third thing that I see that there has been special economic zone, enabling the IT industry. Similar can be done to the plastic processing zones. Either it is pyrolysis or waste to energy or plastic downcycling, upcycling. So plastic processing zones can be enabled. And last, I had a conversation with one of the municipal commissioners. He told me that he wants to establish UP Shark Tank. So I really commended his initiative, and while discussing it, what can happen is that every state can come up with a committee which includes a government official, private officials, and a policy advocate in it, and such committees can fund small startups locally, and these committees are also responsible for the growth and the enablement of such startups who are coming up in waste management. So these are the 5 points which I can just quickly come up with.
Thank you, Sahil. Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing these thoughts in it. Now, is Dr. Saket Krishna with us now? Can you come in, sir? Before I go for 1 minute each to the speakers, Mr. Saket Krishna, are you there, sir? Please go ahead. Floor is yours. Your experiences in getting the funds, you have flush funds, but your experiences, how best you have been able to use them, how difficult it has been. Over to you, sir. We cannot hear you still. Are you
Can
muted?
you ask him to join from the mobile?
Yeah, please join from the mobile. Join from the mobile. We'll come back to you. Take a minute or two. Let me come to each of you in the same order. I want to understand, Dr. Rao, first you. I want to understand in a few lines. It's not more than a minute. We don't have that much time because you are very elusive in your thoughts. How difficult or easy has it been to take funds and then put them into use?
Or because the recycling industry doesn't have a status of its own, and we are being considered equivalent to regular industries, getting loans, getting financial support, getting various schemes as recyclers in the waste management, in e-waste or in batteries, is a very, 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 very difficult task. And so that is an area which needs to be looked into For anybody who's wanting to work on technologies, machineries, plants, this sort of a support is very, very essential, which is not available currently. So a lot needs to be done there, sir. Over to you, Suri, sir.
Thank you. Could I go to the next speaker in the same order, please?
Sir, Hanumant here. I have
Yes,
I have a different opinion, sir. I think there are a lot
1 minute.
there are a lot of green funds available across the world, and a good impactful project would not be a hindrance. Means will always attract good investment for sure. If you see in the last few years that a lot of funds have come in to the recycling business. So there are a lot of PE investment company who are putting money in the form of debt or equity. There are green funds available with all the banks across the world. So a good impactful project, I think, would always.
Okay, brilliant, Hanuman, bringing the diversity in it. Time is very short, so I have to run into a next speaker. Could I request Mr. Saket Krishna, if he is now there with us, to share his experience for 2 or 3 minutes, please, sir? Can you hear us? Not Delhi is doing some excellent work, but let me go to the next speaker. Still, we are not able to get him connected. Can I come to Nitin? Nitin, can you sum up in a minute or so how difficult and easy it has been to get funds and then put them to best use?
In my opinion, the investment can be got in the recycling sector if we have done a good kind of R&D for a project. What are the challenges? What are the solutions to that? If that has been done meticulously, then and you can present it in a proper way to the funding agency, then you can get the funds. Simultaneously, the technologies that you want to adopt should have been chosen based on a good experience, their background, and a lot of research and comparison. So if you can prepare a project which is based on your thorough R&D, finding solutions to the problem, and based on a technological comparison, then
Brilliant.
It's possible to get the funding.
Thank you. All three of you, from Dr. Rao to Hanuman to you, are talking about minimal risk. And I think so that's a valid point. Let me go to the next speaker. Vivek, a minute of yours. And then we go to Himani.
Sure, thank you. So I think I kind of think that the problem lies in the bridging. I think there isn't a shortage of funding that's available both by way of grant or subsidy or by way of investment. And there is a lot of good work that's happening. I think the gap seems to be the connection there. And I go back to the point I made earlier that I think one thing which can bridge that gap is really good quality assessment and a good quality impact measurement matrix so that the investors know where the right work is happening, where there is a measurability, where there is an impact that can be seen. So the investment is well worth making there. So I think there is no dearth of fund, there is no dearth of work. What is needed is a good quality connection that needs to happen. And I think that method could be impact measurement, that method could be good quality matrix that can help to do that.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me now come to Himani. Himani, 1 minute is yours now.
Yes, sir. So in our case, as we are NGO, there are two types of funding, one for recycling of material and other is for welfare of Safai Sathis. So here I talk about recycling of material. So for an NGO, getting fund for recycling of material is comparatively very tough, I say. The reason being because we are in competition with many other registered recyclers and many other players in the market who have better opportunities and better, things with them. Other than that, there is also a lack of confidence sometime in brands with the NGOs in terms of documentation and many other things. Although we as an NGO has grown a lot, but then also the brands and the other people who want to invest, they are a bit hesitant. So that is my point over here.
That's very good. Thanks for bringing a different perspective altogether. As startups, people need to see how the NGOs are leading their way into this really a complex system, I would say, but easily manageable. So thank you. Sahil, over to you, and then we'll go back to Saket Krishna ji.
Sir, I agree with the point of what Mr. Vivek Verma ji said, that there needs to be a bridge between people, the funds available, and people who want funds. And these bridges are, at various levels. First, at the level that this sector is 80% or 75%, this is an informal sector. So first, there should be some sort of incentive so that they can be actually translated into formal economy and then be eligible for formal funding. And then a lot of education is required to such people, that how they can utilize their funds and how legitimate can be they can be in their operation, so that the investor who is investing actually see that there is a return of investment, there is actually value that he's also adding by putting his funds. We Shakti Plastic have also funded a startup by the name of Feel Good Eco Nurture.
Excellent. Very
And
good.
they are making plastic recycled tiles with multi your chocolate wrappers, your toffee wrappers are converted into 1 by 1 feet tile of 1 kgs, and it's I'll tell you the cost later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sahil. And, I have been rather overwhelmed by each one of you. And I apologize for not giving you enough time, because we have another very interesting panel coming. But before the panel, I would request Shri Saket Krishna ji to please come in. He's been with us and trying his best to get in. Please go ahead, sir. Still not able to make it. You are there, sir. We can see you, but there is some problem in his line, I believe so. You are muted, sir. Just put the mute off and come again, sir. We can't hear you. Put the voice loud. In the meantime, while he's coming, you just come in. I'm just closing this session, but you feel free to jump in. Vanisha ji, I think you have got many good points here. The the Technology Development Board and MRAI, what they were looking in a very short span of time, they have really made things to go. But I want to say to the audience, don't go away. Don't go away. We have one more hour with some very interesting people who are going to talk something which matters to you the most, that how in the startups, how do we bring investment funding in the waste management startups? So that's the topic which is going to go. Could I request Commander Navneet Kaushik, scientist from the board, please, Technology Development Board, to go ahead with his 4 minutes, please. Thank you, all the panelists, for panel number 1.
Thank you, sir. But I think I'll slightly need more than 4 minutes, because I'll try and finish what we do and what we can do for the sector. I'll try to be as brief as possible, and I'll try to move as fast as possible.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Yes, please.
Thank you, sir. So I'm Commander Navneet Kaushik. I'm Scientist Chef as Technology Development Board. It's a statutory body of Department of Science and Technology. So I'll cover the presentation in a very brief manner, and probably I'll be open to question and answers towards the end, however much time it takes, or you can write to me on the email. So brief background, mandate, funding process, TDB value addition over the years, and some of the projects we supported. So TDB has been in existence since 1996. We were made under the TDB Act 1995. Our basic aim, which I'll come to the next slide as well, is about providing financial assistance to industrial concerns and other agencies attempting commercial application of indigenous technologies or adapting imported technology for wider domestic application. So that's our only and the most important aim. It is about commercialization. So any private limited company which has indigenous and innovative technologies, we can provide financial support to them as a soft loan equity. And like most of the panelists were saying, no grants. We generally do not give grants. We have very limited, probably in existence of 25 years, maybe not more than 4 or 5 projects out of 350 projects which we have done. The objective, like we have been discussing, promoting new ideas from small enterprises, even at the risk of failure. So we are not only open to startups, we are also open to MSMEs, SMEs, and there have been some big industrial houses which we have also funded. We also act as the government of India guides us, identify and act in areas requiring strategic interventions, encouraging production or competitive consumer products. Coming to funding process, because I think this will be the most interesting thing for the people who are there, including startups and MSMEs. So why should you come to us? Because we provide soft loans at 5% simple interest per annum. After, let's say your project is for 2 years for commercialization, and then we have a 1 year moratorium period. Then after 4.5 years, in 4.5 years, 9 6-monthly installments, the money has to be given to us. Basically, the money is available to you for around 6 to 7 years at 5% simple interest, which is going to be lower than the inflation most of the times. Royalty at 0.5% of the annual sales turnover of the product, which has been developed by the financial assistance. And if sometimes companies have come to us and they said, our sales are going to be big, so 0.5% is going to be huge, money. So what we tell them is, okay, fine, you can short close the loan. There's no penalty for it. If you feel your sales are too high, see, we are not here to make profits. We are here to support the industry, and we are sector agnostic. We have funded in agriculture, we have funded in aerospace, and anything in between. The best part is we do not charge any processing fee, or any burden is given to the company for boarding or lodging of the experts or the committees which come and visit for evaluation or monitoring. Now we have the evaluation committee. There's an initial screening committee where we see whether the project falls into a domain, and then there's a project evaluation committee which comes on site. Now, when I say on site, and the constitution of this committee would be technical experts from the domain. Let's say waste, like even in waste, you will have a battery, you will have electronic waste, you have a normal waste. So whatever the project is about, the evaluation will be done by that domain experts, along with the financial experts who are ex-GMs and MDs of the banks and financial institutions, who look at your business plan, your projections, your models, your viability. So when we support a project, we see it thoroughly, and after that, we don't want to support a project which is get an entrepreneur in difficulty once he gets into the business, because we want him to succeed. So even if we say no, we give reasons in writing why are we saying no to the project. The project cost can be under the following heads: land, site development, building, civil work, factories, plant and machinery, technical know-how fees, cost of filing patents. And we do not give working capital, but we do provide margin money for working capital, and we fund up to 50% of the unincurred project cost. Over the years, we have funded more than a TDP commitment of around 2,200 crores, and we have been able to leverage around 8,500 crores to the market. And agreement, we have signed more than 350 agreements. I think we are closing around 400. And our basic, we have funded all sectors, but our most impactful sector has been health and medical. I talk about this, Santa Biotech, Bharat Biotech. Like today, you're talking about, everybody knows Bharat Biotech, but 20 years back, when we funded it, nobody had heard of it. The first vaccine was developed by Santa Biotech. Then we had funded Ranbaxy. All these names look big: Biocon, Biologically, Aisha Motors, Riva. So all these names look big, but most of them, when they came to us, they were on initial stages. So it's over the period of last 20, 25 years that they have grown big. Now, these are companies which we have funded over the last 25 years. This is typically the biotech sector. Like I said, defense, we have IT. Okay, so I'll finish with this slide. What is common between the first vaccine, which was made in India, the first liver transplant hospital, which was made in India, the first indigenous car, the first electric car, the first RT-PCR kit, and the first 1,000 drone show? All of these have been supported by TDB during their projects. Thank you. I'm finished. I'm open to question throughout this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaushik. Thank you very much. Manisha ji, I have a request. I squarely agree that 5 minutes, 4 minutes was not your day. I request the organizers to please call on 1 hour, 1.5 hour workshop. We all sitting here will bring a lot of our partners, those who are really looking for this support systems, and we really make a beautiful 2-hour session with MRAI or TPD, because I really see that you were so elusive and so good that you were sharing those things. But thank you very much. This is what I wanted to say. We will move to the next panelist, and Anirudh is there on the next panelist. Floor is for you, sir, for 4 minutes. That's been what we have been talking with everybody. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. This has been a phenomenal session. Thank you for inviting us. And I'll just sort of connect the topic with the first session, really, and this was echoed by Vivek as well. Sustainability, the $1 trillion opportunity. And and while I just kind of summarize some of the components that we believe could be part of that $1 trillion opportunity within circular economy, within sustainability, are really the following: low carbon energy, green mobility, decarbonizing energy, green building, sustainable agriculture. And really, in terms of funding, the key focus of this particular segment of the discussion is really trying to see how can a startup or really attract the right investment tool for his or her project, and that really starts.
Yeah, that's what we want, Anirudh.
Right.
That's what we want
Yes.
from you. How you can bring investments, funding for waste management, like you have brought it. Please share that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So first is really trying to, for the founder and the team to understand where does his startup really fit in. I'll give an example. This is from PitchBook. This is a large tracker for startups in the climate tech space. If you see, for instance, even though we know that the funding for startups in general is declining, the amount of credit and funding available for carbon tech is on the rise. And in fact, this tracker looks at carbon fintech, carbon capture, carbon accounting, and therefore really, for the startup founder to start identifying, given that sustainability is still such a nascent and very fast evolving a theme, where does his or her startup fit in, or the company fit in? Where is it really carbon utilization, carbon capture? Is it climate change? And I think that's really the starting discussion. Moving, and sort of now, moving to what our experience has been, there's some issue with the slide, but I can do this without the slide, really. We started off in 2017. At every point, there are different stakeholders, and I'll speak from a startup perspective. There are different agencies within, the funding bodies, whether these are angel funds, whether these are early stage funds, whether these are more advanced pre-series A, series A kinds of funds. It's really trying to advance your stage in the company and try to attract that. In 2018, we didn't even have a business model when we reached out to our angel funds, but we had the conviction of a MVP, a minimum viable product. And that's really with which we went out to the market. We spoke about what our vision with Recycle is, and we were able to start. In 2019 and 20, once the business was evolving and we were starting to get traction, we went out, to the funds that were looking at early growth and sort of then had a detailed Excel of what we thought the future looked like. Today, we're again sort of, in that phase where we're trying to assess what the journey ahead is and trying to see what that investment opportunity is. So I think moving from an MVP to a hyper growth model at every stage, the entrepreneur needs to keep networking, keep working on a business plan and taking it from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anirudh. Thank you so much. I think so. Most of the people here are talking about that bringing a fund or getting the investment. We really need to look product. Commanders have also said the same thing, but they are looking into it when they are funding. So the product is very important, and how the systems and processes are around it to make it a business model. So that the investors are looking for safety, security, and sustainability of their funds. Thank you very much for all of you who have been talking on this. Now let me call Dr. Brajesh Dubey, who is sitting next to me. and who is going to bring in another diversity into this whole talk. Over to you, Dr. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I come from academia. I'm from IIT Kharagpur. So what I'm trying to emphasize that academia has a big role to play here. As Commander Saab was talking about, that we already kind of play some role as part of the evaluation process. But even before that, when the startup is having some idea, to fine tune that idea, to make sure that idea has the techno-economic like assessment of that, to make it it's a viable. We do have like expertise in the academic institutions, and they are doing a bit of part. But I think now the time has come where we have to do more, and we should do more. So academia has to come up in a big way to help this startup so that they can mature their product. And when they go to say TRB for funding, TRB also feels more confident because it has gone through a kind of rigorous process. And then also at the same time, what will happen is our students will get exposed to these. So these students can become partner on those startups too, could become an employee of that startup. We never know. It could become a bigger startup. So that's where I think the time has come in India where if we look at in terms of the small business innovation research kind of program that US EPA started almost like 40 years, 50 years ago. And that has built so much of a startup in Silicon Valley and elsewhere in US. So we have to go kind of something similar. It doesn't have to be copied from there, but something similar model has to be developed in Indian context. And when we look at these products at the same time, now that we have to look at the circularity assessment as well. Whether we are producing some product which is really green. Ultimately, if you're talking about waste management, environmental footprint, so we should not with a product a higher environmental footprint or maybe similar environmental footprint. So how can we do that aspect? And these kind of things, academic institution with their labs that we have developed over last several decades in India, and also the kind of software capabilities that we have, we can play a bigger role and a much cheaper cost than what possibly they can do at other places. So that's, and the capacity building, kind of making people, when I look at waste management, after working almost 15 years overseas, when I came back in 2015 to India, I found that many people who are working in waste management actually does not really understand waste management. So how to make them, because waste management is not an easy task. There is a lot of complexity. The product keeps on changing. Recycling of certain product today, 10 years down the line will be way different. So keeping this capacity building happening, training of the manpower, making people aware what are the things that potential business opportunities. So those things can be done, and we can do through, we are already doing some of those through the Swayam platform, through the online courses, short-term training programs. But I think we need to bring all the stakeholders have to come together. We do it in silos at academic institution. We don't we don't have like a good synergy. I think probably you understood what I'm trying to talk about. That's where we need to bring everybody together and build some of those programs with the help of academics. And I'm for it. I know many of my colleagues will be happy all across different IITs, NITs, and other places in India.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. Thank you so much. I'm sitting next to you and we have been talking. And I think so the points which you really bring, the academics, maturing the funding proposals and the products, bringing students and partners to be in the entrepreneurs is a brilliant thought process. I'm going to come back to each one of you. But let me, before coming to Amrendra, I can see you, Amrendra, very good. Let me check with Saket Krishna ji, who has been trying desperately to be a part of the show. Sir, are you with us? Can you hear us? Oh, wonderful. Congratulations. Come in, sir. Your floor is yours.
Am I audible?
Yes, please.
I am Saket Krishna, presently posted as an Assistant Commissioner in one of the zones of Delhi Municipal Corporation of Delhi. Currently posted in Civil Line Zone. I am having a very limited experience of waste management. But with this little experience, I will try to explain where we are and what we aspire.
Very good.
In Delhi, we are generating around 10 to 12,000 tons per day of waste, out of which my zone, Civil Line Zone, is contributing to around 500 tons per day.
My God.
The tipping fee of logistics, collection and transportation of these municipal solid waste costs around 2,000 rupees per kg per ton.
My God.
So ultimately, it comes to around 10 lakh per day for us to dispose, collect, and dispose our waste from civil line zones. And ultimately, it comes to around 3 crores per month. All waste are either going to the landfill, or in our case, it is going to waste to energy plant. As we all know that the land is limited, we cannot continue like that. Neither we have unlimited land, nor this is an environmentally safe way to dispose our waste. As a UL, we want reduction of our own waste. We want to cut the logistic costs for collection and transportation. So whatever 500 tons we are getting per day, I would like that it should reduce. How it can be reduced? We need decentralized solution for reduction of waste. As solid waste management rules has mandated that RWAs and bulk waste generators, they have to process their own waste. However, it is not going on in practice, and very meager response is there from the RWAs and also the bulk waste generator. So therein we would like to have partnerships with the NGOs and waste management agencies, which can provide us customized solutions for these decentralized waste management. What we lack is, as an urban local body, we don't have finances, we don't have infrastructure, we don't have better technologies. But what we have is, we have space for the firms which wants to participate in our zone or FCD. We have the ground level staff which can coordinate with the RWAs and BWZ for the pitching your idea and acceptance of your idea. So we are here to support whatever the innovative methods the agencies, waste management agencies want to practice in our zone to improve the situation of current waste position and to reduce the waste which is being generated in our zones. Apart from that, there is one more area that I would like to press upon, that is the informal sector, which is collecting waste. I think the recycling agency is totally dependent.
Go ahead, sir, go ahead.
Up to 50% of the waste is coming from this informal sector. And in our zone, there is an area called Jahangirpuri, which is one of the largest areas. These rag pickers are there, and they are collecting waste from all over Delhi, and they are segregating their waste at this Jahangirpuri location. So, as a UL, we want some solutions that how these people can come into the formal sector, how they can be incentivized, how their health conditions can be improved, how they can, from the informal sector, come to a formal sector.
Excellent.
These are the few ideas which I am having with my limited experience. I would request all waste management agencies to come and visit our zonal civil line zones and provide a customized solution, put up a proposal, and accordingly we can take it up. We can coordinate with the RWAs, we can coordinate with the BWG. We also can enforce the solid waste management rules. But right now we are not having alternate solutions for enforcing those rules. We cannot deny the RWAs that we are not going to pick up your waste because we are not providing them the alternate sustainable solution. So I may request all the agencies to
We will come to you, sir. Thank you very much. But don't go away, sir. We are going to come back to you for a minute and two in another 10 minutes. And but sir, I'm really grateful on behalf of Technology Development Board and MRI that you have a heart of gold, you and your commissioner, are extremely open and for partnerships, as you said it 3 times. And there lies the opportunity for the startups. People have been talking how the business models need to take. So I think so there is a lot to chew. And we will come now to Amrinder, who comes from Ramki and has also done some brilliant work. Over to you, Amrinder.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Sodhi, sir, always a pleasure to interact with you. And first of all, I would like to thank MRAI for organizing this wonderful conference. And getting these like-minded people on the same platform always creates some kind of samudra manthan and generates some really good ideas which can be taken up for execution. I've been hearing all my colleagues, my industry peers talk about bringing more investments into the startups. I think it's a wonderful idea. That's the need of the hour. There are a few reasons why I think and I believe so. First and foremost, for a country like India, waste management is something which is quite nascent in its current form. It's been what, couple of years, 5-10 years since we have really started talking about waste management and recycling at scale. Further to that, while it is a nascent industry, the challenges of population, the demographics, and the diversity only adds up to the challenge. Whenever we talk of waste management, we talk of 130 crore people generating waste every day and how to create an ecosystem to be able to handle that kind of a waste. Third, why are we actually discussing this entire problem of funding in startups for waste management? There is a slight history to it. And the history is, traditionally, waste management has always been a cost recovery model. It has always been a process where we ascertain the cost of doing the operation and then asking corporation or the generator or someone to pay for it. It's never been looked at as a profitable, self-sustaining business model which can bootstrap its own way to scale. And that's what remains as a big challenge in the industry even today. There are hardly any example of highly profitable waste management companies across the world. Also, when it comes to creating infra for 130 crore people, there is a huge amount of capital which is required for infra creation. In fact, on a lighter note, a lot of people ask me if I work for a waste management company, and I often take a step back and I respond that no, I work for an infra creation company. I work in a company which builds power plants and which costs 4 times per megawatt more than a thermal power plant. So we are creating infrastructure for the future. When we build MRFs, when I sit down for commercial negotiations for buying equipment for my MRF, I understand the kind of cost which is involved in setting up this kind of infra. So yes, waste management to be scaled up in a country like us, we need a lot of capital. We need a lot of capital in a short time. We need a lot of capital in a short time with metrics beyond the usual financial investing. And we need a lot of capital in a short time beyond matrix at scale. I think that's the problem which we are trying to solve. However, what we know of is that there is a huge amount of capital which is locked in form of what Hanuman said about green funds, or what in terms of impact investment funds, or in terms of sustainable development funds. A lot of these funds are available. First and foremost, what we need to do is to create a pool of these kind of funds together so that we understand what is actually available for investing. There are bits and pieces available here and there, but we need to see the big picture. We need to see, this is my problem statement and this is the total fund which is available to attack and solve this problem. Second, I think after having spent so much time in a waste management company, I think calling it waste management is a misnomer. I think we should call it as an infrastructure segment. It should planet. The moment we do that, yes.
Go ahead. We lost you in between. Go ahead.
Okay. So the moment we declare it as an infrastructure segment, a huge amount of unlocking of capital can happen for the people who are trying to work in this space. And a lot of startups can get benefited around that. Third thing which I feel is we should promote startups beyond aggregation models. post the success of a lot of aggregation models, there has been a rush to create a lot of aggregation models around all the sectors. But I think, again, when I sit and buy optical sorters, or when I sit and buy some ballistic separators, I know what is the cost of manufacturing of these equipments. But I know what is the price I'm paying for bringing those equipments in India. I think it is high time that India becomes Atmanirbhar in this space as well. And I really look forward to startups coming in this space, creating that kind of infrastructure. I know there are startups who are actually working in this space, but I think those are the companies which really need funds. And those funds need to be channelized to them so that they actually contribute not only the cause of Atmanirbhar Bharat, but they also contribute to the cause of the Clean India mission. So it's a silver bullet for multiple agenda of not only the country but also for its people.
Thanks, Amrinder. I'm
We
going to
need a
come
lot of
back to you. You're overshooting your time. We have Abhishek also coming. We'll come back to you in a minute, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Sure.
But thank you for raising up some very thought-provoking ideas. And let's go over to Abhishek, who has been waiting for quite some time. Abhishek, floor is yours for 4 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. I just want to say that the conversation being around startups, I think we are the youngest startup on the panel. We are 5 months old. So we can relate to exactly what capital requirement is. So if you can see my presentation, I would just like to share as a startup founder that startups entering the waste management space, this is a complicated space to operate in. There is no lateral knowledge transfer that you can take as opposed to say an IT industry where I'm a Python developer and I can move between domains. Waste management and circular economy is something where you need to build expertise, and being frugal while building this expertise is very critical. So as a startup founder, I would advise other startups who are watching this that they should avoid raising capital till their value proposition is extremely clear in terms of what domain they want to operate in. Since we primarily operate in multiple domains while operating a circular economy or a waste management startup. Third thing is, if you do decide to go into a recycling infrastructure driven startup, then it is very difficult to pivot your business model once your infrastructure is in place, as opposed to an IT company or a tech startup. So it's a very, very conservative move that you need to make being a founder or being the founding team. As a startup, I think the kind of capital that is required is when you go to raise your seed, try to raise seed we need patient capital. We need patient capital since it takes a long time to finalize your business model. And especially if you're trying to build some proprietary technology in terms of processing, then we need capital that is patient. And startups should also explore venture debt and not only equity, since working capital requirement, we are a very working capital intensive industry in circular economy. So access to good debt at lower interest rates is something that you require so that you're able to innovate across your business functions. Once your business model is set, once your unit economics positive, and I believe that you should be very, very focused on profitability since day one, since it's very difficult to build in profitability at a later stage. So I think if you're profitable since day one, you can definitely demonstrate growth to potential investors, and you can then raise capital to come out of the survival mode and go into the growth mode, for which venture I think is much suited. I think the problem that we are facing currently with venture capital coming in is basically the industry is at a very nascent formalization stage. So there is no benchmarking in terms of good quality exits to the investors or $1 billion company is being created in this sector. So that is where majority of the hesitation comes from the investor, because they can't see a replicable model in the country or abroad. We have to realize that we are in a high volume, low margin business, right? So building in unit economics, like I said, to ensure that, and then building in technology, processing technology, supply chain technology to accelerate those margins can definitely create a good picture and a good pitch for investors. Another problem I see is with investors asking questions whether any startup can succeed in a single stream. So only can an e-waste company become $1 billion or a $5 billion company? And that is a question that still needs some answering. But majority of the investors are looking at multi-stream horizontal expansion of startups into various categories. So I would advise founders to look at it from that point of view. And in this case, I think there will be a lot of mergers and there will be a lot of strategic partnership between players operating in different domains to come together to form a mammoth startup, we can say, or create a $10 billion, $15 billion startup. I think one of the key reasons why venture does not come into picture is because of the irregular government policies that are coming in. So the EPR policies get changed. The new e-waste draft rules have come in, which have completely eliminated some sections of the value chain. And this creates a huge friction for investors to come in because they are not sure whether the kind of money that they're putting in will even exist after 1 or 2 years. So I think the government, we need more consistency in terms of regulation, where startups can then build business models around it and go and scale. As a startup founder, some of the areas that we are focusing in, and I think new startups should focus in, is not our material sciences also, where product design will come into picture. Chemistry and chemical engineering is something that is going to really drive material sciences and help recyclability. In terms of reuse, we are building some kind of machine learning and AI-based technologies where we can predict the quality of the asset, or we can predict the price point of the downstream selling. So this is where a lot of disruption can come in. Being in the circular economy space, we are operating in a commodities market. We have to be very clear about that. So we need some kind of financial modeling tech that goes into each supply chain so that we can hedge ourselves against huge fluctuations in the market on commodity pricing. And yes, as of course, reverse logistics is something that is going to really disrupt and create huge investment opportunities. I think EVs coming in is going to significantly reduce the cost for reverse logistics, which accounts for a huge portion of our costing. And yes, infrastructure creation, like many of the speakers mentioned, we really need to invest in good infrastructure to create recycling and supply chain. So yeah, these are my 2 cents.
Yeah. Finish it within 20 seconds, please.
Yes, absolutely. I'm done. So these are my 2 cents. And I think there is a huge potential, but there is a huge learning curve. So I'm very hopeful that in the next 5 to 10 years, we are going to see a lot of good companies come out. And I wish everyone on the panel the best of luck to do that.
Abhishek, thank you for a very, very comprehensive note. You are not a 3-month-old startup. You have put in a lot of experience and thought process, what the others have been saying. Wonderful. Yes, the investors are always looking to minimize their risk and have more secured investments, which lead to sustainability, as you rightly pointed out, and many others have pointed out. Let me come back again to all the speakers, and let me start with Commander Navneet Kaushe for maybe in a few lines, a minute, what you want to say about, if you have to sum it up in a minute, what will get you the funding for the startups?
So I think the discussion has already been there about it. The only thing you need is a good business plan and a good technology, something which is sustainable. Great. And I think that underlines everything.
Excellent.
And a good team, of course.
Yeah, carry on.
So now I'll come back to TDP again, sir. Like why I say that is because we had a call for the waste management, which is closed on 10th of July. But having said that, we are open 365 days, anytime, and applications are submitted online. So even if you have a problem submitting an application, people can call us. We can and we help. Even if your application is faulty, it is not rejected. We give time. What you can say. We respond to people. We call them up and say if something is missing out of it.
So kind of you. So kind. So product has to be more worthy, which is fine. Anirudh, back to you in a couple of lines. What do you want to sum up? How can we indulge the investor?
I think I'll take our example. I think the ability to basically learn from mistakes quickly and share the learnings, pivot and move on. I think that candid conversation with the team and outside, I think really makes the process easy.
Well, you are a growth-oriented company. You have brought it up, and you are one of the founders. Very good. Thank you. People might reach on to you. Now, coming back to Dr. Dubey. Dr. Saab, how can we really link up with your institutions as small NGOs and startups?
So yeah, so any small NGO or any startup, if they have certain idea and they want to test it out in a small scale, pilot scale, we do be having the facility in our labs with different instruments. Say if you want to go to funding, they would definitely will ask you that what kind of emissions your process will have. So we can test out and tell you that these kind of problems you will get in terms of environmental pollution coming out. These are the things you need to kind of taken care of. Even we can help you in the techno-economic evaluations. Now those tools are available where to look at the different technologies in terms of environmental footprint of the proposed technology versus your competitor already in the market.
Oh,
because
brilliant.
if you're coming with a startup, you have a new idea. So there is already some product in the market, or if you are even bringing a new product, any agency will look at, okay, what is the environmental benefit you are bringing to it? Are you going to really create pollution? And how much pollution you will create? All those things we can quantify and can help equip that startup to defend their product in a much better way when they go to TRB.
You are excellent.
Or even the TRB wants us to help us in evaluation, we can do that too. So we are already doing that. So so we can play a very.
I think you are pointing out to a very important point, which all of them have said, that the product, even panel number 1 said that you have to have a very, very secure product in terms of business plan, technology, in terms of emissions, credits of carbon, effluents, residues. You can set up all the testing and standards. Yeah. You can give them all. And you can also give a student of yours to really go.
Exposure. Yep. The student gets the exposure. It's good for the student because right now many times what happens is students are doing many theoretical projects. All the students love to do the projects with any startup because that gives them they can get into the business and they learn a lot and they can partner with a startup. You never know. IIT students are bright students. So they can partner, they can take your company to the next
level. You're making me very excited about it. At my age, I'm becoming very young. And let me go to Amrinder about his thoughts on it, and then we'll sum it up with Abhishek coming in, and then we'll have a small question if anybody wants to say anything from panel 1 or 2. Amrinder, a minute or two maximum.
Yeah. So my 2 cents, and I'll keep it very short and crisp. I think it's been talked about on a couple of occasions to have a very, very crisp business model with a very, very sharp unit economics and a clear roadmap to scale. I think the 2 things which are a must-have for attracting investment in this space. And I think just to sum it up, recently Telangana started the T Hub for incubating startups. I think it's time to create a W Hub where all the startups who want to work in this waste management space come across, sit together, cross-sell ideas, and create really, really scalable business models together. This is a space which is too big for any 1, 2, or 10 of us. It's a space for every one of us. Everybody can play their part. That's my take on.
Thank you very much, Amrin, for being very succinct. Abhishek, you have benefited the most, I believe so, because your thoughts were trying to do that. And I will come to Dr. Saket, who is still with us, and we will have him talk before he leaves. Is Dr. Saket Krishna ji with us or not? I don't know. I think he is gone. Abhishek, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So my last 2 cents is, as an industry, one of the challenges that we will face and we should actually come together to solve it is human capital. Right, we are competing with other industries also. So we are competing for talent with other industries. So as an industry, we should make it a point to innovate, come together, cross-sell, sit across the table, and make the industry attractive to attract good talent. And good talent is something that can solve all problems. So capital and human capital is something that I would stress we all come together and solve the issue for. Yeah.
So you take me back. Thank you very much, Abhishek. Now that I've got some time, before I ask a question, you bring me back to my good old days when I used to work with Department for International Development, DFID, British government, where they were always trying to bring in a model of capital, human capital, social capital, economic capital, natural capital, and trying to foresee that how we are affecting and by our works and our technology, we may not impact the other wrongly. What Dr. Dubey was also trying to say, that we give you the options across, that you may not go by impacting one, you may lose the other. So that's what Stockholm Convention also talked about: climate change plus nature and pollution. If we have to grow as a humankind and be more responsive and sustainable and have more investors, we have no choice but to be with the nature and protect the nature. We've got some minutes there. If somebody wants to ask a question to another colleague here, or a request to the audiences, they can write to TBD or MRAI, Technology Development Board, or MRAI, and they can then shoot these questions through the answers from this very capable panel which has been created. Over to any one of you who wants to say something or has key burning issue. Over to you. Dr. Manisha, you were raising a hand. Go ahead.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of opportunities are there and all good things. But I have one question to the entrepreneurs here who have availed VC funds. So what kind of, I know there are many good points, but what is a bad VC? And how can you overcome? Because we have heard this also, and that's the reason maybe recycle has...
Anybody wants to speak? Recycle or Abhishek or Hanumant is not there, but anybody? Yes.
Abhishek, why don't you start?
So we haven't raised any VC money, but there is nothing like a bad VC or a good VC. There is a bad value proposition and a good value proposition. So if you have given your investors the right path to profitability and the right metrics, then I think they're a partner on your journey. But the differences come if the value proposition is not clear. But so I think it's like a match made in heaven. So you need to find the right partner for your thing and align them to your vision. That is very critical.
But Himani might also like to say, she's from an NGO background. They have got some grants and other things. Before we go to Anirudh, Himani, do you want to say something? Have you understood what she's trying to ask you? What have been the difficulties, challenges? Himani?
Yeah. So in our case, the major difficulty is the inconsistency in the disbursement of funds, I feel. Getting a project, doing a project is it takes time, but the major thing which is required is the consistent funds. Until and unless we don't get it, we can't actually implement or do excellent in that work. So that is the main thing. Other than that, I also feel that sometimes the projects are so short term that there is no scope of improvement. Like there are very short term projects, 3-month projects, 6-month projects. The project should be at least 4 to 5 years project if we want to see any change. So that's
where the product, when you make, that is the
Right.
point. Manisha ji, you want to cross-examine, and before we go to...
No. Yeah, I just wanted to check with the VC funds whether the arrangement fees, what is that kind of, maybe the next speaker.
Yeah, Anirudh.
Sure, Benisha. So coming back to your point on bad VCs, and I think so just to add to what Abhishek mentioned, there are two scenarios when probably a VC can become quote unquote bad. I think one is when the expectations of the VC are not in alignment with the founding team and with the vision, right? And therefore, I think that selection cost really comes in when you are working with a VC, pushing your business model and you sort of get into that arrangement or that marriage, which eventually seems to be crumbling. And I think now those situations are less frequent, and probably more so in cases when there's a dramatic market correction or a market shift. But the second, reason and more common reason for a bad VC is because of the pressure that a VC puts on the founding team to accelerate at a pace faster than what the founding team is able to navigate. And that's why, this whole debate about growth versus profitability comes in, because you are really riding a horse, and unfortunately,
Yes, go ahead.
the VC wants you to run so fast at a speed where you probably lose your leg, and that's when you start chasing growth and forget profitability, and that's one loose terminology where VC could become bad. But I'm sure I mean, with an improved selection process, that might not happen to most. Thank you so much.
And in this sector, because we don't have, I mean, usually we don't have products, and that is one major challenge, because that's where, because investors always look at what kind of products are there. Of course, business model is very important, but then, for investors always there should be something which they can see, and where they can see the profits immediately, or they
Yes.
can see that it's coming very soon. So that is one major challenge which I see why the investors don't want to really come into this field. But I know that this is very recent, that a lot of investments, especially from the private investors, and it's even today banks are still not very forthcoming. So, I mean, on that, do you have any comment?
Sir, do I have your permission to respond, or should we open it up?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, just a minute, because we have Ullas Parlikar Saab waiting
Sure.
for, and
Absolutely,
his time is
sir.
getting on.
Absolutely, sir.
Just about a 20-second one.
Sure. I mean, I don't think it's really easy to kind of summarize that. Having a product is not required as long as there's a business value proposition and a clear room to demonstrate the scale. I think a physical product is not required in my mind.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Benisha, for your interventions. We have no more further time for anybody to come with the question. Apologies for that. But I think so. It's been a wonderful discussion. And the safety, the measurability, the security in terms of the investors is what they are looking at. The impacts, the outcome, the scalability, the replicability, all these aspects the investors are looking. And one point which was said was that sometimes they break loose, and then that consistency goes wrong, and that really suffers the product. The product is normally being tested and given to them, but the irony is that these things happen in a world. But thank you very much. It's been a joy to be with you all, and apologies for not giving you much time, but thanks to MRAI and the TBD, the Technology Development Board. We will have many more to come. Ullas Bhai, floor is all yours. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sodhi sir. I hope I am audible.
Yes, please.
So, it was wonderful to, I had the opportunity of listening everybody with I would say a huge sort of a concentration, because I had to make some notes also. And I must confess that there's so much to learn from the submissions made by each one of you. The first panel, which discussed about the opportunities in different segments of the waste management, I'm sure whoever as startups are present here in this particular discussion, they would certainly get hugely benefited, because as was mentioned by almost everybody, every segment, every, I would say, activity associated with waste management has a potential to play a role for the startup, whether it is collection, segregation, treatment, disposal, management, transportation. You take anything, and there have been very, very interesting points which have come about during the discussions. Even the awareness generation to the masses, which is also very important. Vivek, you brought out about the importance of crunching the numbers putting them in structure, because the numbers really bring about the change, and they facilitate the changes. So you must, and for that also, I'm sure, you need a startup to do that. It just doesn't happen on its own, right? And therefore, every aspect, which each panelist has talked about has a remarkable, I would say, opportunity. The commissioner, the assistant commissioner of Delhi, he very rightly brought a very interesting, proposal, which is to partner. The ULBs must partner, and they are looking forward to the partnerships with these startups, because that is where I think a business mode and an administrative mode can work together to bring about the changes which are required in growing this particular waste management sector. So I feel very kind of energized, by that particular submission which was done by the commissioner. He also talked about the various opportunities which are there. He talked about the Jahangirpura, if I have listened to the area correctly, where there's a huge opportunity for startups to come and do something, so that the work, the facilitation which has to happen for a proper waste management to occur will happen. There was also another important aspect which was brought in, which I liked very much, which I think it was brought out by Mr. Saraf, and also by Mr. Agarwal, and also by Vivek, that the business model, the startups have to look at creating a proper business model, a workable, sustainable business model, and then at the opportunities that they are looking at, then only there is a future for the startup to really grow and really make some business out of it. The second panel, which discussed about the funding, possibilities and how the funds can be really tapped. Of course, TDP is there to provide it, but I think the other funds also are relevant in this particular segment of startup. And everybody really, brought in very, very important aspects. For example, Mr. I have 10 pages of notes, so I'm just flipping from one to another. Basically, the when we want to have funds, the startup need not concentrate on looking at the funds or acquiring the funds. He should more concentrate on making his value proposition appropriate. And that is something very important, because once the value proposition is correct and appropriate, then the funds will flow to him. He doesn't have to go to the funds. So that is something which I think has to be very clearly understood by the startups. Dr. Dubey, I think was the most important aspect which you brought in, sir, and that was academia's role. Because the way academia can look at any project is substantially advanced and appropriate for looking at the success of such projects from sustainability point of view, right? 10 years ahead, 15 years ahead, what is going to happen to that particular project? Because as a 3-year, run of the mill kind of a project, possibly it doesn't make difference. But after 3 years, if he realizes that, look, he's actually, creating more impact in the environment, a bad impact in the environment, then he would lose entirely whatever he has earned in the process. So the role of academicians in trying to assess the project has been very well, kind of brought in by Dr. Dubey, and I think needs to be looked at. The angle of circularity, because that is what is going to drive the entire economy in days to come. And that is where, whether the project or the process that the startup is looking at, is it really looking, ahead to really merge in that circular economy model or not, also has to be very clearly understood. And only, and very, very rightly said, Professor, you, that whether the project is really green or not. Today, with whatever limited understanding of the industry is there, we can always say everything is green. This is green, that is green. But when we start looking from the environment consideration, from a very holistic consideration, I think academicians can really bring in the aspect related to its greenness and ascertaining that. Then we had very important submissions from Mr. Amrendra also, who talks about what kind of capitals are available and how we should not call waste management as waste management, but we should call it as an infrastructure, development. Because I believe, I'm not so much knowledgeable, but I'm sure a lot of you are. The word, makes a lot of difference. What you call what actually makes a lot of difference in terms of the investments, and I think that is where I think what Amarendra said, I liked it very much. What Abhishek said also is very, very important, because he has, I think, he actually talked about his experience and his own experiences where he was trying to get money on board. So the profitability, the major focus of the startup has to be towards profitability. The amount of working capital that these startups have to engage is substantially high compared to a normal business. And that is where, unless the money is coming back and serving the requirements of the capital, the working capital, it's very difficult for these startups to manage. And that is where only profitable approach, keeping a very strong focus on the profitability really makes a difference for the success of the project. He also stressed upon, it is not necessary to just, go for raising capital, but more important is to look at whether our value proposition is correct or not. We have to assess that very, very clearly. Commander Kaushik sir, you actually brought in very, very fantastic, kind of knowledge to us in terms of what TDB can offer and how TDB has been. And we were very impressed, that most of the advancement, whether it is from agricultural sector to the space, you have been and also the vaccinations, which is another very important aspect. Today we are surviving because of that, because of your, I think, the seed which you sowed in terms of funds. We are seeing the light of the day as far as those big, bio related projects are concerned. What else? So, and lastly, I would like to say that what the Binisha started with, by giving a demographic kind of a idea about what India is and what it needs and what waste management is required to be done and how there's a huge opportunity. And then in terms of flowing the information, getting the information from the panel about the opportunities and then the funding, I think it has been a real good feast for the audience who have been a part of this particular discussion. And I would like to therefore say that this was an excellent deliberation I have ever had. I have been able to actually, I have been able to learn a lot. I'm sure everyone else who is participating in this. Lastly, Jo Sodhi Saab, you have been remarkable. Not just in terms of making the flow of the panel in the right manner, but also kind of steering it at the right points to ensure that the timing is maintained, because that is one of the most important aspects of the moderator, and which many times we are not able to do it. We are so kind of inclined to start looking for more and more to come to us from the panel, but although you had to cut short, but I believe that the submissions which were required to be done by the panel were thoroughly done in the process. So I'm very happy with that. So I take this opportunity now to thank all the panel on behalf of MRI for sure, and if Mr. Kaushik and Vinisha agree, on behalf of TDB also, that this was a remarkable kind of a panel discussion, very excellently organized, excellently kind of carried through, and I'm sure whatever submission that Sodhi Saab made, that we should have a separate 2-hour session to ensure that the startups are really benefited in the process. because today every panel member had a very short time. So from MRI, I would like to say that I have liked that idea, and I'm sure my colleagues from MRI also have liked that idea. I'm sure Benisha and Mr. Kaushik also have. So it'll be good to take that particular initiative forward soon. So I take the liberty of again thanking everybody and also the audience who have been a part of this particular interesting panel discussion. If I have missed out anybody, anything, I am at loss, and I'm the reason for that. So thank you once again. Is there anything else you would like to finally say to conclude this? Anything, Benisha or Mr. Kaushik?
Thank you very much. Actually, it definitely met our expectations. So thanks to all the panelists here and also Sodhi sir. And we are on dot. In fact, we had started 2 minutes late, but now we have also ended on time. So that was really good, crisp, and I think, again, really a good deliberation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, last bye.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.
Thanks to all.
Thank you so much.